concerned friend of Caspar David Friedrich's once referred to the artist as the most solitary of the solitary, and many of his sublime landscapes paint a picture of a forlorn soul. But Friedrich also created some of the Romantic period's warmest and most wondrous images, in which kindred spirits face the mystery and marvel of the world together. I'm Rachel, and this is Several Circles. In what's arguably Friedrich's most iconic painting, a lone figure stands on the edge of a dizzying precipice. We can't see his face, but we can feel his amazement, cut with a tinge of terror as he looks out over the engulfing expanse. Friedrich's forbidding landscapes were doubtlessly informed by a life rife with tragedy. Having lost his mother, his brother, and 2 sisters by the time he was 18, he understood that death and the biting, bitter sorrow it instills in the living is one of the many reigning forces that we're up against. Despite our best intentions and ambitions, our strength of mind, body, and will, we're relentlessly vulnerable to time, chaos, and fearsome, formidable nature. It's an intimidating but meaningful condition that manifests in the sublime, a lofty concept with ancient roots. The earliest known text on the Sublime is a work of Greek literary criticism dated to the 1st century and attributed to Longinus, though the true author is unknown. Longinus proposed the Sublime as a state of perfection, achievable through greatness of language. But by Friedrich's day, the Sublime meant something more bewildering than beatific. The 18th century Irish statesman and philosopher Edmund Burke famously articulated the phenomenon as that state of the soul in which all its motions are suspended with some degree of horror. Published in 1757, at the height of the Enlightenment period, Burke's treatise on the visceral experience of the sublime was in stark contrast to the Enlightenment's atmosphere of scientific enquiry and religious skepticism. In an era demanding reason and rational thought, the sublime was an invigorating device for philosophers, writers, and composers, for visionary architects who sought to fabricate what Burke called the passion caused by the great and sublime in nature through impossibly colossal structures, and for artists who wished to liberate themselves from idealized neoclassical conventions. They pushed back against the order and precision of neoclassicism with unruly, unpredictable environments that evoke how it really feels to weather existence. The artist should not only paint what he sees before him, Friedrich once said, but also what he sees within him. This was the essence of the Romantic movement, which emerged in the late 18th century while Friedrich was training in Greifswald, the coastal village in what was formerly Pomerania, now northeastern Germany, where he was born in 1774, followed by the esteemed Royal Danish Academy of Fine Arts in Copenhagen. The Romantic ethos was interpreted by artists throughout Europe, from J.M.W. Turner in England to Eugène Delacroix in France, and Francisco de Goya in Spain. Artists working in the region that became Germany cultivated their own flavor of Romanticism, anchored in the storm and stress movement, which likewise conjured a sensory maelstrom. It was in the Protestant North, particularly in the city of Dresden, that the so-called German Romantic movement took hold. Upon the completion of his training in Copenhagen in 1798, Friedrich settled in Dresden, in good company with the likes of fellow Romantic painter Philipp Otto Runge. This video is sponsored by Masterworks. Founded in 2017 by a top 100 art collector, together with a council of tech entrepreneurs, Masterworks is the first platform for buying and selling shares, representing an investment in artworks by titans of art history, including Jean-Michel Basquiat and Andy Warhol, as well as leading contemporary artists such as Banksy and Yayoi Kusama. Thanks to best-in-class research and acquisitions teams who determine which pieces to purchase and sell at optimal prices, you can buy in at a fraction of what major collectors pay. And in 2021, Masterworks members saw a 31% return on their investments. Art is a stable and appreciating asset class. Contemporary art prices outpaced the S&P 500 total return by 164% from 1995 to 2021. Join the 325,000 people who have signed up for Masterworks and diversify your portfolio by investing in some of the biggest and most beloved names in art. Visit the description below to learn more. In 1805, Friedrich submitted a selection of delicate sepia drawings to an art competition organized by the storm and stress poet Goethe and was awarded half the prize. But the exhibition of his first oil painting in 1808 wasn't quite as well received. Painted when the artist was about 34 years old, the cross in the mountains, also known as the Techen altarpiece, ruffles a fair few feathers for the way the natural world was employed to elicit religious devotion. Like the mountains and trees, the crucified Christ is a mere silhouette against the dusky sky, just barely illuminated by a vanishing ray of sun. With Jesus' teaching, an old world dies, that time when God and Father moved directly on earth. This sun sank, and the earth was not able to grasp the departing light any longer. The cross stands, erected on a rock, unshakably firm like our faith in Jesus Christ. The firs stand around the cross, evergreen and enduring through all ages, like the hopes of man in Him, the crucified. In stark contrast to traditional paintings of the crucifixion, chaotic and crowded with despairing figures, Friedrich's daring depiction is lonely and silent. To unite the sacred and the secular was controversial, but to imbue rock and tree with divine symbolism, to suggest that nature is divine, was even more so. Although Friedrich was a devout Protestant himself, for many, the image was downright profane. But any press is good press, as they say, and Friedrich's career flourished nonetheless. In 1810, he exhibited 2 paintings at the Berlin Academy, where he was elected a member that same year. The Monk by the Sea is easily one of Friedrich's most revelatory compositions, in which a man of God communes with a vast, turbulent sky. The unorthodox perspective presents the landscape as the dominant subject and yields an intensely moving scene. As the writer Heinrich von Kleist wrote, this painting lies there like the apocalypse, since it has, in its uniformity and boundlessness, no foreground but the frame. It is as if one's eyelids had been cut off. Its companion piece is equally haunting, but in a different way. There's no whistling wind or crashing waves, just a small procession of monks in the graveyard, a quiet, desolate picture of things that were. Friedrich's frequent inclusion of Gothic architecture was characteristic of German Romanticism. The Gothic history of his homeland was a source of pride, especially during the French occupation of the region. Both of these paintings were made during the Napoleonic Wars and promptly acquired by the Crown Prince of Prussia, whose territory was brutally seized. So they're often read as mournful allegories of war, as well as poignant paintings of how small we are compared to nature's enormity. What are we compared to the sea and sky, history and time? In 1818, now well into his 40s, Friedrich married Carolina Baumer, whose presence in his life appears to thaw his unforgiving landscapes. Many of his subsequent paintings portray 2 people taking in and taking on the world. But as Friedrich knew too well, he was no match for nature, and the constant reminder of his mortality was sobering. In the early 1820s, Friedrich completed one of his most arresting landscapes, inspired by a wintertime trip to the Elbe River. Tremendous shards of glass tear into an Arctic sky, with the ruins of an obliterated ship strewn about the savage scene. A powerful picture of human audaciousness annihilated by nature, the painting illustrates the peril of intrepidness and probably references Sir William Parry's recent quest to find the Northwest Passage, which was hindered by the frozen terrain. But more chilling is another autobiographical interpretation. In 1787, a young Friedrich fell through the ice while he was skating. His brother Johann recovered him and drowned in the process. Friedrich carried the trauma and guilt of the accident for the rest of his life, and yet not all is lost. Above the earthly wreckage, clear skies await. Ships were a recurring allegory in Friedrich's work, serving as symbols of transcendence and the passage of time. He completed the stages of life just before suffering a stroke, which limited his dexterity and made painting in oils too arduous a task. He returned to watercolors and sepia drawing, as well as existing works, before he was completely debilitated 2 years later by a second stroke, which left him nearly paralyzed. Impoverished by his inability to work, Friedrich descended into the irretrievable depths of despondency. Friedrich almost always chose to immortalize places in the midst of a metamorphosis, landscapes obscured by shifting light, creeping shadow, cloud, and fog, to create what many regard as his most profound landscape, the Wanderer above the Sea of Fog. Friedrich journeyed southeast of Dresden to the Elbe sandstone mountains. He meticulously documented these dramatic formations to create a deeply subjective picture that's since become one of the most recognizable images in European art history. Though the Wanderer's identity is unconfirmed, it's been noted that his mode of dress is that of a volunteer ranger in Prussia's fight against Napoleon. The art historian Joseph Kerner has postulated that the model for this painting could be Colonel Friedrich Gotthard von Brincken, who's believed to have died in action a mere year or two before Napoleon's final defeat at the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. It's probable that this painting is a patriotic celebration, but Friedrich purposefully concealed who the Wanderer is. By positioning his back to us, a compositional device that literally translates to back figure, he serves as a stand-in for all of us wayfaring wanderers. Perhaps even more astonishing than this epic image is that for a long time, the world turned its back on Friedrich. The emergence of new trends, such as naturalism and realism, which advocated for objectivity without idealism or sentiment, suddenly staled Friedrich's melancholy landscapes, and he fell out of favor during his lifetime. Even by 1824, he was granted professorship at the Dresden Academy, but denied an available post to teach landscape painting. By the time he died, age 65, in 1840, the world had moved on. But the final nail in Friedrich's coffin came long after his death, when Hitler weaponized the artist's patriotic landscapes to promote the Nazi slogan, "Blood and Soil." Friedrich became guilty by association, and his reputation worsened still after Germany lost the war. But he was also an immensely positive influence on so many other artists, from his contemporary, Johann Christian Dahl, to the Swiss symbolist painter Ferdinand Hodler and the German contemporary artist Gerhard Richter. In the 1970s, when scholars were willing to reconsider his legacy anew, Friedrich's work was refreshed by a comparison to Mark Rothko's Vast Voids, a radical comparison put forth by the art historian Robert Rosenblum. Friedrich once said, "I must stay alone and know that I am alone, to contemplate and feel nature in full." And yet, Two Men Contemplating the Moon is one of Friedrich's warmest paintings and a personal favorite of mine. On a stroll through the forest, Friedrich, who's pictured on the right, and his friend and disciple, August Heinrich, pause to admire the sky, a motif that clearly meant something to Friedrich. Eternally enchanting, the moon has humbled humankind for time immemorial, and to Friedrich it was a divine wonder, full of mystery and majesty. How fortunate we are to share in this moment of awe. This episode's community spotlight is on the Canadian artist Stéphane Richard, who finds endless inspiration in the sublime landscapes of Nova Scotia where he lives. Taking cues from realism and impressionism, Stéphane reflects on the natural beauty of his environment through paintings and prints, which allow him to revisit and reinterpret his favorite motifs. Visit the description of this video to learn more about Stéphane. Thanks for watching Several Circles. Don't forget to subscribe for more videos about the lives and work of extraordinary artists from across history and the present day. Let us know in the comments if there's an artist you'd like to know more about, and if you're an artist yourself, we'd love to hear from you. Get in touch for your potential community spotlight feature.